Good evening, everybody. Anthony Russell here from Banners on the Wall, and we're back for a second go around. As you can tell, the background has changed from last time, but it is the same format as before. They say the devil is in the detail, so it is time to put some detail into the devil. So my guest is with us, so we will start as we usually do. Your name, please, sir.
Cam Buckle.
And your jersey number?
51.
And well, isn't this a moot question? How long have you been with the Solent Devils?
Oh, it's about 3 months now.
Cam, thanks very much for taking the time out of your evening to kind of speak to me. For folk, as I like to do, lifting back the curtain ever so slightly, because we're going to talk about this. It's not strictly Solent related, but it's currently Tuesday the 29th of October. There's been some news out of Basingstoke, and of course both you and I are heavily involved there for quite some time. We're not going to get ahead of ourselves, but there's some very, very exciting news has come out this evening. Cam, your initial reaction to the news of what's happened in Basingstoke tonight?
It's great. I mean, it's not just great for people who have played there for ages, but it's great for the next level of kids coming in. And if it all goes ahead as we've all seen, then and they manage to fix everything that they're saying, then I think it'll be really good. And yeah, it's bringing back an ice rink that I've grown up in my entire life back. Yeah, so it'd be good.
There's something to be said as well, and about just hockey in the south. It's felt quite a lot with the National League having sort of expanded a little bit. We've got lots and lots of teams far up into the north now, and with all due respect to my friends in Dumfries, that's a lot of travel, and it's seen a lot of guys drop down into South One, or in your case, you've come up from South Two. The player pool in the south has kind of ended up quite concentrated in this division now. That feels like a chunk of that is as a result of Basingstoke having kind of left the scene for a little bit. Ultimately, I mean, it's obviously benefited the Devils, but I think it's benefited South One as a division as well. Would you agree?
Yeah, I would agree. You look at some of the big teams like Streatham, Chelmsford, Invicta even, they've picked up a lot of guys from the National. And I mean, last year you have to look, even in South 2, we had Howes and Petsy playing for us, and even got like Stampy down, Adam Jones, and it's making the level of hockey even better down in these divisions, which are meant to be growing divisions. So then the level of juniors we're seeing come up are just improving because they're playing against these level of guys as well. So yeah, I would agree with you. It's increased competition massively.
You obviously played a little. You obviously played a lot of your junior in Basingstoke. You did play a little bit of your juniors in Guildford as well. How different is it now, making your hockey home somewhere that isn't where you grew up?
It took a bit of adjusting at first, but it's definitely been good having a few Basingstoke guys down there, like Banner and Sutts and Lackey. They've helped me adapt pretty well there, but it's more the ice size, as you and I both know, is definitely one to get used to there. So I could have gone anywhere else and the ice would have been the same, but it's just Solent has taken a bit of getting used to down there.
Let's wind it back to the start a little bit, because anybody who knows, certainly anybody who knows your parents now, your mum is fully enamoured with her horse that she rides on quite a regular basis. How do you end up playing ice hockey as a youngster?
So my parents, you must have spoken to them before. They've got funky accents from all the way up in Hull, and they when they first met, they started going to games, watching the Seahawks up there. And when they relocated down here, I believe for job purposes, way before I was born, their local team was Basingstoke, so they just kept going to Basingstoke. And when we were born, I believe my first game I went to, I was about 2 weeks old, and my brother even was 2 days old. So I grew up with that more than I did football. My dad's not really into it. The horse, obviously, I could say so much about that. My sister's, that's more something for her. But no, hockey is what I grew up with. And it's kind of my dad, my brother and me all moved to hockey, and my sister and mum went to the horse on a weekend kind of thing. So yeah, that was always our thing.
So how old were you when you actually first got on a pair of skates and got on the ice then? Because it's got to have been quite young.
Yeah, I must have started about 4-ish, I think. I'll be corrected after this, no doubt, but it must have been about 4 years old when I first started skating.
It'll probably take a little bit of a while. Currently, your parents are on holiday, is my understanding. So you've probably got a week's worth of grace once this comes out to get past that one. I suppose so. As you say, like, you didn't really grow up with football, and with all due respect to our friends at Basingstoke Town, Basingstoke's not been one for sort of a massive football pedigree, but you had Southampton, Portsmouth, Bournemouth to the south, Reading to the north. Obviously, Basingstoke's not a million miles away from London. Most people I've ever met in Basingstoke will generally have a football team tagged on to it as well. How come you just never end up getting pulled in that direction, or do you think it was just because it wasn't really around the house?
Well, don't get me wrong. When you start at school and stuff, football's the biggest thing there. So I have a team. I'm a Chelsea fan, not local, I know, but like me and my brother will go to games. We've been fans our entire life, but I think hockey more took over because it was something a bit niche. It's not the sport that's out there, you know. And you go to school, I'll play ice hockey. They're like, oh, that's cool. They want to hear about it more. But yeah, no, I definitely have and had an interest in football. So yeah, but hockey was always the one.
And ultimately, Basingstoke and Gosport quite similar in that way. And again, not to disrespect our friends at Gosport Borough or Fleetlands or anything like that down the road, but with all due respect, Gosport is a hockey town. So you've moved from one hockey town to another.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that shows with the fan base we get in as well. They're pretty dedicated, and although it's a small rink, they do seem to sell it out quite a lot of the time. So, yeah.
Yes, we'll certainly touch on certainly a couple of the recent sellouts that I've managed to be able to get to. I've got to ask then, from Basingstoke man to Basingstoke man, Guildford, what happened there?
As I got to about under 10s level, moving out of what was about to be cross ice hockey, because I don't know if you know, they changed under 10s to cross ice. So I was the last age group that didn't. And when I moved into under 12s, we kind of looked at teams around, and our age group at Basingstoke was good. We had the likes of Richard Croft, Sam Brooks, Josh Kelly in our team. And I know Josh and Richard moved to Guildford, and it was kind of do I want to follow them? Do I not? And in the end, we took it upon ourselves to go. But wow, some of the training times for juniors, it's a Sunday morning at 4:30 in the morning. So my parents were definitely committed to that, but it ended up working out. We won a few national championships, and obviously made a lot of friends on the way and enjoyed hockey over there. So yeah.
Of course, you mentioned Paul Petts, last year joint coach at the Bison, now playing for the Phoenix. Feels a bit strange that he's not playing around this level, but I think a lot of people understand why Paul's probably having a crack. That's a fantastic looking Phoenix team, and obviously there is quite a gap between the Flames as they are now in the Elite League and kind of what sits below it. But obviously Guildford, that path as well between Guildford and Gosport has been pretty well trodden in the past as well.
Yeah, I mean, all due respect to Petsy, he's one of the best players I've played with, and I see why he made the Guildford move. I did for a bit think he was going to come down to Gosport as well, but no, he's stayed there, and he looks to be enjoying it. That team it's one to be reckoned with in that division. So
yeah. So you and your brother obviously played for a little bit as well. He stopped playing a little while ago now, although I can't remember exactly when he did. He didn't play.
No.
I'm pretty certain I saw your brother. I heard your brother did play for a small bit.
I think he got to seniors, played a couple years, and yeah, kind of stopped there. He was always more to watch it as well. He always enjoyed watching it more than playing it. So yeah.
Boy, I can sympathise with that. I skate like a giraffe with an ear infection. By the way, you made your way through. You captained at your junior levels, but your first bit of senior hockey was with the Basingstoke Buffalo. Of course, your career has that little bit of a circular loop in it. Do you remember that first game as a senior?
I do, to an extent. It was against Bristol, and I remember being nervous for it because it was back when the rink you could sit on all four sides as well. And the Buffalo, although they're not a big team, they were the second team at Basingstoke. They still got a few people through the door every now and again. And I made my debut with Brooksy at the same time, and we kind of didn't look back at that level from there. I think we both scored on our debuts against a Bristol team that were always very good at that level as well. But yeah, it kind of just went from there, really. Yeah.
loath not to mention probably another person who's passed you crossed with a little bit, and of course now with the Solent Junior Devils of Yanni Virtanen, because I'm obliged to mention him at least once when Bristol are mentioned in these things. But eventually, you move from very, very prolific for a very, very long time with the Buffalo. You got look-ins with the Bison. I think probably the best, the most respectful way of putting this was you never quite managed to quite stick it at certainly EPL level and then into NIHL level. What kind of happened there? Because there's obviously a few guys did kind of manage to put on. Sometimes life gets in the way, work gets in the way, those kind of things. Why did we not see you more in a Bison jersey? I suppose would be the question here.
No, that's a good question. In all honesty, it was down to myself, and just commitment at the time. I just started uni. I was really struggling to weigh up the two. Doug and Ash were two of the nicest coaches I've ever had a chance to train and play under, and they kept pushing me to play, kept pushing me to train, but it's just life got in the way. And if I could go back and change it, I definitely would have gone back and changed it and definitely made an effort a bit more, because they really put in the effort with me. So yeah.
You are, of course, a long time retired. Dare I ask what happens outside of a hockey ring? What occupies the time of Cam Buckle these days?
Honestly, it's just I couldn't even explain why it wasn't these days. Or do you mean back in
These
those
days? These days.
Oh, these days I'm working a lot. I'm getting into project management soon, hopefully. So that's going to take up a bit more time. But yeah, it's just a bit housework, cooking, work, and hockey. Really, it's pretty simple at the moment.
Good way to relieve the stresses of the working week, I find is hockey. But coming back to the Buffalo, because let's go back to the summer of 2023, because the Bison have skated, as I've said, they sort of disappeared off into the mist, just out of sight, as I like to put it. When did you first find out of the changes? Because, of course, for people not familiar, there's a few guys like you, the Parsons brothers, Sam Compton, Yanni had obviously been around for a little bit there as well. Tell us about that first conversation, because there was those big changes with the Bison disappearing. Dan Weller-Evans, of course, known to Devils fans as well, because he, of course, appeared during the COVID era as well. Alan Wilson, Paul Petts come in as coaches, alongside with Simon Beer, whose number is retired by the Buffalo. What happened there? Tell us about those kind of initial kind of conversations for you guys, because that was a really big change really quickly.
Yeah. I remember the first thing that happened was I gave Simon a call. So Simon has been basically my coach since 16 now, I'd say. He's always had some sway over my hockey since I've been 16. And I remember telling him that, oh, look, I'm going to make a step up this year. I had a couple teams speaking to me, and I was like, okay, it's the year. We'd heard the Bison had gone. We weren't sure what was happening to the Buffalo. And then I just got a message out of the blue after he said, like, yeah, good luck. And it was like, you might want to hold on. There's an announcement tonight, kind of thing. And when I saw the announcement, I knew, hang on, this is a chance for us to win some silverware of my hometown club. And obviously from there it grew. We got Jonesy in, we got Stampy in. And yeah, it was a year that it might have been one of my most years I enjoyed the most in hockey for a very long time. So yeah.
Of course, you had to play against Solent last year, and of course, you've sort of been making sort of trips to sort of Gosport and bits and pieces. But yeah, the weird circularity of hockey in the south is a kind of everybody sort of ends up a little bit sort of playing anywhere. I remember very markedly being at a game between the Buffalo and the Junior Devils where the Buffalo won 15-0, which I believe was Harry Harcup, of course, now also a teammate at Solent, his first game for the Buffalo that evening. Was there a particular moment last season where you guys realised, oh, we're taking this so much more seriously? There's something really on here.
I think for a few of us, it kind of was almost nailed in from the first few sessions. Petsy and Howes were very on it. They were very serious with us and telling us, look, if we all take this seriously, there's no reason we can't go all the way here. And they were very realistic with all of us as well about ice time, about who's playing what and where. And everyone really bought in and knew their roles well. So like obviously you had Petsy, Howells, and I've forgotten who played with them. It might have been Scott Ander, and we knew they'd be our first line. I was then with Harkup and Xander, and we knew that we'd get ice as well. And then but you had other guys who might not have got more ice, and they didn't really care that year because they knew that we had something special going. So yeah, that's from the beginning we were excited.
Of course, it all runs to Alexandra Palace at the end of the season. The cup, we won't talk about the cup, and the league, of course, was probably just a little bit out of the reach, just because the start of the season probably didn't go quite as well as it could have done. But it all ends up at Alexandra Palace and that playoff win. And Xander Robinson, of course, now the MK Thunder, scoring that winning goal with a couple of minutes to go. I mean, I've spoken to quite a few members of the roster about how it felt in that moment to win. I do want to hear it from you as well when that buzzer finally goes and you kind of, silverware back to Basingstoke after what had been quite a torrid sort of couple of years of the situation there.
It almost felt unreal to begin with. I mean, we can go from the goal because the goal had 2 minutes left in the game, and I was on the ice with him, and I remember thinking, he's going through 3 guys here, just past the puck, and he managed to do it, and I've got to give it to him. It's one of the better goals I've seen in my time. And then, from then onwards, it's nerves, obviously, to see out the game, and just pure excitement. It's been a while since I've won anything. It's been junior level, and especially to do it with your hometown team, that was, and some of those guys as well, like Compton and Yanni as well, they'd really worked hard that year. And to finally see them lift the cup, it was good. Great feeling.
Yes, certainly. Having had to watch from a distance due to other commitments that day, I will not repeat what I ended up shouting whilst driving down the motorway when that happened. But either way, initially, of course, as well, the talk was that the Buffalo were going to go on. Was your plan to stay, or was your plan, because you'd originally planned to step up anyhow? Obviously, we know what happens, that the junior Bison, the Buffalo as well, put a pause on things with the news, with the initial sort of idea that the rink was going to kind of close. What were your original plans during the summer?
That first month or so was very, let's take a step back and analyze. And we had our awards ceremony, and I spoke to Petsy there. I don't think Howells was there. I think he had other commitments. But Petsy said they were looking to start the team up again, as you know, because they'd been announced on the roster and they were going to do it. And they put up a convincing story. Like, we can repeat it, we can do this and that. The one thing that I miss out on, I'm going to say his name again, was Brooksy, who I'd played with since I've been about 8 years old, missed last year through injury. He just had surgery and he was coming back from injury this coming season. So it would have been a chance to win something with him potentially. And so I was and ahhing. I'd had words again, obviously with Muzzer and with some other coaches in this league as well, and even an AHL too. But when they shut down, Muzzer gave the most compelling story, and the team he's built down there is good. So it's better than good. I think we've got a team that can really go far down there. So it was a pretty easy decision from there. So
I was about to ask, of course, because we talked a lot about your past. We talk about sort of the here and now and what's to come a little bit, because of course now you are a Solent Devil. You've like you say, you mentioned some of the other names of people who kind of come down from Basingstoke. Ryan Sutton, of course, who's got a couple of winners' medals in his pocket. Dan Lackey with a 2016 EPL title medal in his pocket, mostly thanks to Thomas Karpov and Alan Lack being on the line with him. But you're here now. I mean, you talk about the convincing case that Alex Murray put up as coach to convince you to come down over some of the other teams locally that you could have gotten to. What was it? What do you remember from what Muzzer said that made you think Gosport's the place I need to put on the jersey for now?
It's kind of how professionally the club's run. Obviously, we see it from afar. We can see that Muzzer loves the club. He is Mr. Solent, isn't he? Really. And he painted the club in such a good way that made it almost, you couldn't say no to it. They had a gut out in the summer. A lot of people left, and he kind of said along the lines of, "Tell me what you want to play, and then come in and prove that you can play that role and that short role." And that's. I mean, it worked. Whatever he said, so it was. Yeah, I liked the fact that he was challenging me to do something, not just promising something out of the blocks like you're going to be first line centre and play penalty kill, power play. He asked me what I want to play, and then challenged me to do it. So, yeah.
And it's been relatively prolific so far. You're over a point a game as things stand right now. Was obviously you've played a little bit at the levels above, played a little bit at the levels below. Was there any sort of apprehension, a little bit of like, because this is, the hockey at South 1 is different from the hockey at South 2, is different from the level above. Different aspects of the game are much more emphasised in South 1. I'd argue it's become a much more physical league over the last couple of years. Was there ever that kind of worry about adapting? Because you are, again, with all due respect, you're not the largest of men. You are quite quick on your skates, but you're definitely not going to win any prizes for tallest member of the roster. Certainly not with Big Chris around. But what was that thought process in your mind in kind of adapting to hockey in this level? And as you say, on quite a unique ice surface like you've got in Gosport.
So there was a bit of apprehension at first, especially about Gosport ice in this division. And it was kind of a thing. Those first few training sessions, you're really trying to get used to how you turn, how you open up in that rink. Because if you try and do what you do in Basingstoke, you've hit the boards as soon as you've turned, basically. So it was good to have a few training sessions to get that apprehension out of the way. But then the first game, like the first game of the season, it was really like, okay, keep your head up, keep your head up, keep your head up. I've kind of just played like that ever since. And obviously you're going to take contact in these rinks and in this league against some of these teams. But yeah, I'm enjoying it. That's for sure. The upped physicality is fun. Playing faster hockey is fun. I'm playing with the guys I'm playing with. We're really clicking at the moment. So that's also fun. So yeah.
I mean, as you mentioned, obviously it's been a little while since we've done one of these on banners on the wall. As you mentioned, a very different roster for the Devils this year, and a brand new captain, of course, for the Devils in Callum Perella-Fox, but another guy who's been around the roster, quite a bit. What's Callum like to have as a captain? Because of course you've had quite a few, even in Basingstoke over that time. But Callum now is sort of leading this sort of the newish era of Solent Devils hockey. What's it like having him leading from the front?
Honestly, off the ice, one of the nicest people I've ever met, and he's got that approachability where he's going to be a good captain. From the first session we walked in, introducing himself, introducing you to the guys, he's just one of the nicest people off the ice. I can't sing his praises more. But then on the ice, he knows when we need to go. He's a loud voice to be heard. Obviously, with Muzza being a player coach, sometimes he's not there on the bench. He's actually on the ice, and you've got Cal really leading that and being the voice to be heard. So yeah, really good.
Another person, obviously, that we're both quite familiar with, having been around sort of Basingstoke a little bit, and lots of hockey fans in the south will be familiar with. But Kane Russell is in the best of ways, is a real weapon at this division. Now, you generally don't end up playing on a line with him, but as someone who's had the opportunity to watch him at a couple of different places over the last couple of years, he's a very entertaining player, and he's a massive asset to the club this year. And it feels like he's stepped up a little bit as well in terms of taking some of that responsibility for goal scoring this year.
I mean, yeah, the stats show themselves. He's come out flying, and I think he won Zero Pucks Given Player of the Week this week as well.
He did indeed.
He's really got us over the line in some games. He got that last minute goal against Chelmo. He got 2 this weekend as well. He's good to watch. He is good to watch. So
I think the other person as well, given the timing that we're talking about this, the person who's probably stuck out most for me actually since the start of the season, Charlie Wedge appears to have had a light bulb flick on in his head from last year to this year. He's taken such a massive step. Still quite a young guy as well, still very much sort of developing as a hockey player. Where you're probably that sort of I wouldn't say you're a generation ahead of him. That's probably making you a little bit too old for what you actually are. Apologies again to Dan Lackey, but being that little sort of a step ahead of him in age wise. how does it feel to you looking at somebody that age, kind of being up where they're very clearly getting up to speed and are going to, because for me, if he pushes on, he's going to be an absolute menace in this division.
Yeah, I get what you mean. I remember watching him in Basingstoke because he used to be a junior here. He was in my brother's age group, I believe. So I used to get to watch him play a lot, and he has come, leaps and bounds, especially this season. Obviously he played twos last year, and we played against him in Buffalo, and he's one of those players that is hard to play against, and it's just because he just doesn't stop going. He's just constantly at you, and he's got the speed as well. So yeah, he could end up being a very good player at this level if he carries on, because he's really started the season very well.
I'll ask you the really dull question, but it does feel in these sort of circumstances we do need to. It's an interesting one to cover, and only because it feels like a very different Solent Devils this year compared to last. You're new into this group, so I'm interested to, having spoken to some of the older, some of the guys who've been around the club a bit longer last year, as opposed to someone like you who's literally been here for the better part of 2 months. How far can this team go? Because I think there's certainly a bit of a question. There's been a few results this year that have not been so good. The shutout defeat to Slough was obviously not ideal. The home game to Slough was definitely not ideal. Beat Chelmsford on home ice, have really pressed home against some of those teams that people have been expecting to be a little bit lower down the table. I think people, it feels almost, at times it feels quite easy to say Solent will finish here, but at other times it's quite hard to kind of place where they'll end up. You're in it, you're playing it. What can this Devils team do?
So yeah, the ambition, as always, is to be top, right up there with Chelmo, Slough, and Streatham. And obviously, to start the year, we played Invicta and we went 3 goals up, and we bottled that on home ice as well. So that wasn't a great result. But from that, obviously, like you said, we beat Chelmsford on home ice, and I think that can show that on our day we could beat any team in this division. But as the Invicta result shows, we could get beaten by anyone in this division. I think Slough, as you brought up the result, that away game was one of the toughest games of hockey I've ever played. They really are on their day. They're something else. But we're working to get there, and our aim, obviously, at the end is to win everything. And I think we have got the group that can. Obviously, the league, we need some teams to drop games, but it's a long season and anyone can beat anyone. So I think, as everyone does, our aim is to be up there and win it all.
Having joined this group now, who's the person who's kind of surprised you the most? Because you played with or against a fair few guys, and I must confess I nearly fell out of my chair when I saw Tom Banner had scored the other week. But and almost, or even doubly, when somebody said he scored twice in 2 nights, but he appears to have had that goal against Cardiff taken off of him for some reason. But who's the player who you come in and you've just gone, blimey, you're a fair bit better than I thought you were, getting that opportunity to kind of see them up close? Because of course people will see you 2, 3, maybe 4 times a season, but when you get to watch a guy week in, week out, it's a different impression. You've got the opportunity to train with these guys during the week, get to play with them on weekends. Who's that person that's taken you by surprise? Who should we be keeping an eye on that maybe we're not watching as closely as we have been?
That's a great question. There's a few guys that spring to mind, because obviously I've watched a few Solent games over the years. Mason Wild is one of those. He's one of those defenders that you want on your team. He'll put his body on the line. He can go end to end if needed. And yeah, that's something I didn't really pick up from watching them. But yeah, he's really stood out. I'm trying to think of someone else who stood out. Like you said, Wedgie. He's also stood out quite a lot this year. And another young one is Ollie Cackett. The way he's been to start the season, really good. He's come out the gates flying. He turned 18 today, I think. And yeah, he's another one that who knows how far they could go if they keep going this way.
Every time I watched Ollie Cackett last year, he was the archetypical pest. He was an awful lot of fun to watch last year. I'm really, really excited to see him get an opportunity in Division 1 a bit this year, and of course still getting some ice time for the twos as well, because that's the joy of having the junior Devils around as well. You're over a point a game. So this might feel a little bit of a silly question to ask, but how do you think you're doing at the moment? Because, like you say, Alex Muzz gave you that challenge. What do you think you can do, and then go in there and sort of prove it to yourself. I mean, it's hard to say it's going badly when you're over a point a game. I feel, but how do you reckon you're doing at the moment?
Personally, I feel it started well. I know there's definitely more I can give as well. It's as we touched on, it's the adapting that's been tough to get used to, especially in this rink. But it is slowly getting there. Muzz is giving me the ice to show him that I can do what I said I can do. But yeah, it's feeling good. I'd rather even up with more goals, or like a few more goals than assists at the moment, but they'll come. But yeah, I feel I've started how I would have not expected to, because I was expecting less than a point per game, but I think it can improve as well. So I'm hoping to just take it up from here.
Let's go back to last weekend then. The Halloween jerseys are certainly incredibly different from anything we've ever seen out of any club. I suppose if you're going to be Halloween and you're going to be called the Devils, you need to go that extra mile, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, the design was good. It was a great weekend to be around the club and around the rink. Muzza and the off-ice management really did well putting on a show, especially for the kids as well. I don't know if you saw any of the photos from the weekend, but the winner of the Halloween costume was a little kid dressed as a sin bin, and they were inside the sin bin. It was quite cool. But yeah, the jerseys were quite nice. It's refreshing coming from obviously no money in Buffalo, where we wear the same jerseys all year for 3-4 years, to getting to wear a jersey like this. So yeah, it was cool.
And most importantly, a win against Swindon Wildcats 2, a new team to the division, a new, obviously very markedly different from the Solent Wildcats 2. The Swindon Wildcats 2 that you obviously played in years past. Ken Forshy behind the bench with Shannon Taylor, very much pulling through a lot of the youngsters. They're an interesting team, Swindon, having had the opportunity to watch them. What would they like to play against?
Obviously a lot of youth in that team, so they have energy coming out their ears. They were on us from the start, but I feel like we always had control. I know the score might not show it, but there's just that thing where I feel like we were always in control of that game, but it only took until the end for us to finally get a 2-goal cushion, and then we really felt in control. But yeah, they came out, they knew how they wanted to play, but I feel like the more experience we had, we kind of kept it in our control. So yeah.
Yes, not able to be there, unfortunately, last weekend. I would have been there just to see who was taller out of George Howe and Chris Necrosavicis out of the two of them. In games like that, though, where you like you say, you're in control, but you're not quite, sort of able to kind of sort of dominate in that kind of way, because we've seen quite a lot of lopsided results across all the divisions at some points this year. Is it easy to get frustrated in games like that, where you're in control and you're quite comfortably in control, but you're just not quite getting the output for the effort? How do you kind of manage that kind of level of frustration? Because with all due respect to Muzz, he can be quite calm, but he can also not be very calm at times, particularly when the team is not playing in the way he thinks it should be playing. How does that dynamic kind of play out in those moments?
I've heard him say many times in the room, he's going to be calm this year, and it's kind of the first time we've seen him get a bit heated, and it was needed. We as I said, we came out slow, and it really kicked us into gear. But managing the frustration there, you kind of have to use it just to drive you on, get that goal, make that hit, like find that pass. And realistically, I could have had 3 or 4 goals that game if I knew how to shoot the puck. But it's one of them where we kept digging, and as I said, I think experience helps the frustration, because if you keep going, it's going to reward you in the end, and it did. So yeah.
And then this weekend, bit of a tougher test coming up this weekend. Streatham away, not an easy place to go, and a Streatham team as well that has got a very, very big weekend themselves. And given that they've lost to Chelmsford last weekend, I would not be I'm not a betting man at the best of times, but I would not want to be going up to the High Road this coming weekend. You have to do it. How do you beat them?
That's a great question. I'm sure Muzz has been studying and knowing how we're going to play, how he wants us to play, and we just have to listen to him. We've got to trust what he's going to say. We have to give it 100% there, because we know at the worst of times they're on you all the time. They're a real team as well. If you hit someone badly, you're going to have 5 guys after you. If it's one of those where you have to keep an eye over your shoulder, but you still have to play your own game somehow. So yeah, we'll see how they do against Slough on Saturday, and then take it to them on Sunday, because with that Saturday off, hopefully we have the fresher legs to go at them. So.
And then, so like a 1-game weekend before eventually heading back home on the 9th against Invicta Dynamos, who I always seem to end up magically appearing after, because I was there at the Invicta game at the beginning of the season. I was there at Slough. So yes, you've lost both times I've appeared, so I should probably stop appearing. When you look at the teams in this league, and it's obviously very clearly you enjoy playing hockey and you're enjoying playing for the club, as it were. Are there any particular fixtures on the calendar where you just think, I'm really looking forward to getting stuck into that game? Like, you look ahead of time, you think to yourself, that's one I'm looking forward to. Or are you one of these people that can just be so in the moment that you're just excited for the next thing that comes up?
Personally, I just enjoy playing any game that we have. There's obviously big weekends like next weekend where we have Invicta home and away, that you look at and you're like, okay, that's a good weekend. That's a hockey filled weekend. We'll really see where we're at after that weekend as well as a team. But no, to answer your question, every game is just in the moment. I enjoy playing it. So yeah.
As we're sort of edging towards the end of our time together, this is usually where we get into some of the fluffier, some of the funnier questions. Why 51?
So my number growing up was 15. And that is I think Muzz said, a semi-retired number at Gosport for Fitzpatrick.
Yes.
Yeah, that was his number growing up all the way through Solent, so I couldn't have that. Next would have been 16, but I think Riley's got that. And then 61, the inverse of that, but Sutzer's got that. So then 51 is what my brother grew up wearing, because it was the reverse of my number. So I just thought, may as well take 51.
Who's got the worst taste in music in the room this year?
Do we only ever get Cal stuff on the speaker though? So I can't answer that. We only get Cal stuff. So and that's not to put Cal down. We like Cal's pre-game stuff. I've heard it's been a change, because they said it's been the same music for the last God knows how many years. There's been apparently a little change this year, but I couldn't tell you what that is, because it's my first year.
This is where I get myself into trouble by saying to people that I don't like country music, which seems to always, I don't like country music and I don't like golf, which seems to anger hockey players all over the place. Who on the bus, or whenever it is you guys are going to away games, who's the person keeping the spirits up on those long journeys in the dark back from Cardiff?
So we actually travel up by ourselves, but if you want to talk about who's just keeping spirits up in general, it's people like Cloutman, Harry, he keeps us up. Obviously, Captain Cal, he's always there, bubbly. And even Muzz, to an extent, he's always there talking, chirpy, making sure we're all ready. Yeah, that's those guys.
Yeah. Do you have an NHL team?
Yeah, I'm a Bruins fan.
My commiserations. But I'll give you then the horrible thing I always give hockey players in this circumstance when they do have an NHL team. You can watch live with your own eyes, front row. You can watch the Bruins win the Stanley Cup, but you will never win another trophy as long as you play. Or the Devils win the league, but the Bruins will never win the cup again in your lifetime.
Oh. If you said Devils win league and playoff double, then maybe I'd take that. But it'd be great to see the Bruins win, because obviously... Oh, I can answer that. That'd get me in trouble.
here to ruin everybody's day by hook or by crook. And as we kind of sign off from our little chat here, as I say, no home game for the Devils this weekend, away in Streatham. So if you can, obviously it's a little bit of a late face off on a Sunday, but if you can get to the high road, do go make some noise. And then back on the 9th of November, back in the Devils lair, back at Planet Ice Gosport. A message to the Devils fans: obviously your new hockey home for the time being. What are your parting words to folk as we end our time here this evening?
We have revenge. We've got to go out for revenge that game. Losing at home is never anything we want to do, so we'll definitely be looking for revenge on the 9th.
Certainly should be an interesting one. It's going to be a very, very tough weekend for the Devils. Obviously, remember tickets for that game on the 9th of November. It's a 5 p.m. face-off against the Invicta Dynamos at Planet Ice Gosport. Tickets are on the Solent Devils website. Click all the usual bits and pieces, social media, and all those wonderful bits and pieces as well. Cam Buckle, thank you very much for taking the time to speak to me this evening. For the rest of you lovely folk from the Solent Devils, we'll be back again at some stage with another detail in the Devils. So for Cam, as Anthony Russell saying, stay safe, and so long until next time. So bye, Cam.
Bye. Thank you, Anthony.